History is not a story we have finished reading. Scattered across the globe are objects that simply should not exist, artifacts that science cannot explain. By the end of this journey, you will encounter 20 of these profound mysteries that challenge the very timeline of human achievement. How could a 2,000-year-old device predict solar eclipses with the precision of a modern computer? Why does a medieval map appear to show a continent buried under miles of ice? We are about to explore the silent evidence for lost knowledge and forgotten worlds. What do you believe is waiting to be rediscovered? The very foundation of archaeology rests on a simple principle that objects from the past can be understood through the lens of our present knowledge. We dig, we analyze, and we fit the pieces into a story that makes sense. But what happens when a discovery simply does not fit? When an artifact emerges from the soil bearing technology, artistry, or materials that defy the accepted timeline of human history, the entire framework of understanding is called into question. These are the out-of-place artifacts, objects that seem to belong to another time entirely. They are not merely old, they are anomalously advanced or inexplicably out of context. A lump of metal found in a coal seam dating back millions of years, a gear-driven mechanism recovered from an ancient shipwreck, a map that depicts lands unknown to the civilization that drew it. Each one is a silent question mark etched in stone, metal, or clay. Scientists and historians dedicated to rational explanation are left with a profound puzzle. The artifact is real, it has been tested and verified, yet its existence suggests narratives we have long dismissed as myth. Could there have been advanced civilizations lost to the cataclysms of prehistory? Did ancient cultures possess technological secrets that were later forgotten? Or do these objects point to contact with something or someone from beyond our world? The struggle is not with the artifact itself, but with our own paradigms. Modern science excels at explaining the how, the chemical composition, the method of manufacture, but it often stumbles on the why and the who. When an object contradicts everything we think we know, the temptation is to dismiss it as a hoax or a mistake. Yet when multiple, credible examples persist, they collectively form a chorus of doubt against the official story of our past. This is the captivating tension we explore, the space between what our textbooks tell us and what the silent earth occasionally whispers back. Buried beneath the sea for 2,000 years, a corroded lump of bronze and wood held a secret that would stun the modern world. Recovered from a Roman-era shipwreck near the island of Antikythera in the early 20th century, the artifact initially seemed unremarkable, just another piece of ancient debris. It was only years later, as layers of calcified marine growth were carefully removed, that researchers saw the truth. This was not a statue or a simple tool. Inside was a breathtakingly complex assembly of precisely cut bronze gears, arranged in a system of intricate clockwork. We now call it the Antikythera Mechanism, and it has been rightfully dubbed the world's first known analog computer. Dating to around 100 years before the Common Era, this device represents a leap of technological thought so profound it feels out of place in history. Its purpose was celestial calculation. By turning a hand crank on the side, an operator could align dials and pointers to predict the positions of the sun, the moon, and known planets. It could forecast lunar phases and, most astonishingly, predict solar and lunar eclipses with an accuracy that rivals some modern methods. This was not astrology, it was precision engineering applied to astronomy. The gears, some with teeth cut at precise angles, formed a mechanical model of the cosmos as the Greeks understood it, a physical simulation of the heavens inside a wooden case. The profound mystery lies in its isolation. This level of mechanical sophistication, This fusion of abstract mathematical theory with precise metalworking was not thought to exist in human history until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. Where did this knowledge come from and where did it go? The device hints at a golden age of Hellenistic science and engineering that history books have barely glimpsed. Scholars believe it may have been created in the workshops of Rhodes, a center of learning, possibly influenced by geniuses like Hipparchus. Its purpose is debated. Was it a rich man's philosophical toy, a teaching device for a temple, or a practical navigational aid for ancient mariners plotting courses by the stars? The Antikythera Mechanism forces a humbling realization. It is a single, surviving fragment of what was likely a broader tradition of advanced craftsmanship and scientific instrumentation. How many other devices like it were created, used, and ultimately lost to time, their metal recycled or corroded into dust? This one artifact, salvaged from the deep, rewrites the timeline of human ingenuity. It tells us that the ancient world was capable of conceptual and mechanical feats we never attributed to it, suggesting chapters of technological history that are missing from our records. It stands as a silent, gear-driven testament to a forgotten height of scientific achievement, waiting in the dark for centuries to deliver its message. While the Antikythera Mechanism reveals a forgotten mastery of mechanics, another artifact hints at a different kind of ancient power, one that seems to flicker with the spark of electricity itself. In the collections of the National Museum of Iraq sits a small, unassuming clay jar, roughly the size of a man's fist. It was discovered in the 1930s near Baghdad and dates to the Parthian period, around 2,000 years ago. At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than a simple storage vessel, perhaps for papyrus scrolls or precious oils, but its contents tell a far more intriguing story. Inside the jar, researchers found a carefully placed copper cylinder, and suspended within that cylinder, an iron rod. The arrangement was deliberate, and the materials were specific. The jar's mouth was sealed with an asphalt plug, which also held the iron rod in perfect isolation, preventing it from touching the copper. To any modern eye familiar with basic physics, the setup is eerily familiar. This is the structure of a simple galvanic cell, a battery. The theory is compelling. If the jar were filled with an acidic electrolyte, something as common as vinegar or citrus juice, a chemical reaction would occur between the two different metals. Electrons would flow from the iron rod to the copper cylinder through the acidic solution, generating a small but measurable electric current between the two metal terminals. Experiments with replicas have confirmed this is not only possible, but it works, producing around 1 to 2 volts of electricity. This is where the profound mystery ignites. What was its purpose? We have no written records, no diagrams, no other similar devices with wires or attachments from this era to give us context. The absence of a wider technological ecosystem makes its classification as a purposeful battery deeply controversial among archaeologists. Several theories have emerged, each more fascinating than the last. One suggests it could have been used for electroplating, the process of using electricity to coat a base metal with a thin layer of a precious metal like gold or silver. A small current applied over time could achieve this, and indeed, some gilded artifacts from the region show plating techniques that are not fully understood. Another idea points to medical therapy. Ancient texts from other cultures speak of using electric fish to numb pain, so a conceptual understanding of electricity's physiological effects might have existed. Could these jars have been used to generate a mild, tingling current for therapeutic purposes? Or, as skeptics argue, was it simply a secure storage vessel for religious scrolls, with the iron rod acting as a protective core and the asphalt seal keeping out moisture, the electrical properties being nothing more than a strange coincidence of materials? The truth is, we may never know for certain, but the Baghdad Battery, as it is commonly called, forces a provocative question. It stands alone, a silent, clay-encased puzzle. Does it represent a fleeting, experimental grasp of electrochemical principles, a secret known to a few artisans or priests and then lost for centuries? Or is it merely an archaeological Rorschach test, where we see a battery because we live in a world powered by them? Whether it is a misunderstood storage pot or evidence of ancient electrical experimentation, the artifact hums with possibility. It suggests that the fundamental concept of generating electricity, a force we associate entirely with the modern world, might have been stumbled upon, harnessed in a crude form, and then forgotten long before Alessandro Volta stacked his first discs in the year 1800. It is a whisper of a different path not taken, a spark of knowledge that briefly illuminated the ancient world before fading back into the darkness of time. A different kind of ancient mystery is not forged from metal, but from parchment and ink. In the vault of Yale University's Voynich Library rests a book that has defied understanding for over 5 centuries. Known as the Voynich Manuscript, it is arguably the world's most famous unreadable text. Created in the 15th century, this codex is a beautiful and profoundly baffling artifact. Its approximately 240 vellum pages are filled from edge to edge with an elegant, flowing script that uses an alphabet completely unknown to modern linguistics. But the text is only half the puzzle. The pages are lavishly illustrated with vivid, colorful images that only deepen the mystery. There are detailed drawings of plants that seem both familiar and utterly alien, their leaves and roots arranged in ways that do not correspond to any known species on Earth. Other sections feature intricate astronomical charts showing unfamiliar constellations and celestial diagrams, alongside strange illustrations of what appear to be biological or anatomical systems, with networks of tubes and vessels connecting tiny, nude female figures bathing in or interacting with green, pool-like structures. For decades, the world's top cryptographers, linguists, and historians have tried to crack its code, treating it as the ultimate cryptographic challenge. Even modern artificial intelligence, trained on thousands of languages and codes, has been unable to find a consistent pattern that translates into a coherent message. The manuscript's statistical properties, the frequency of its characters and words, are unique. They resemble a natural language, but one that belongs to no known family. This perfect resistance to decoding is what gives the Voynich Manuscript its haunting power. It is not merely a forgotten language. It is a system of communication that seems to operate by rules we cannot yet perceive. The theories about its origin and purpose are as varied as they are fascinating. Some researchers believe it could be an elaborate, meaningless hoax from the Renaissance, crafted to deceive a wealthy patron, though the incredible consistency and effort across hundreds of pages make this seem a monumental, pointless undertaking. Others propose it is a treatise on herbal medicine and natural philosophy, written in a cipher to protect valuable knowledge from rivals or the church. Perhaps the most tantalizing idea is that it records a lost natural language, or even a constructed language, from a culture or intellectual tradition that has otherwise vanished without a trace. There is a profound loneliness to this object. It represents a complete thought, a detailed observation of a world real or imagined that we can see but cannot read. Every illustration is a window into a mind we cannot access, every line of script a sentence we cannot hear. It guards its secrets not with locks or obscurity, but with perfect, elegant silence. The Voynich Manuscript stands as a permanent question mark in human history, a reminder that the past can communicate with us clearly in every way except the one that matters most, through words we understand. It challenges not just our skill, but our very assumption that all human knowledge is ultimately translatable. While some mysteries are locked in unreadable text, others are carved in simple wood, waiting for the wind to give them purpose. In the shadow of the Great Pyramids, within a tomb at Saqqara dating to around 200 years before the Common Era, archaeologists uncovered a small, elegant artifact carved from sycamore wood. At first catalogued simply as a model of a bird, it was set aside with other funerary objects. But this was no ordinary bird. The artifact, now known as the Saqqara Bird, possesses a design that gives modern observers pause. It has the general shape of a bird in flight, with a streamlined body and stylized wings. Yet its most striking feature is a distinct, upright tail fin, perfectly perpendicular to the body. This is not an anatomical feature found on any bird in nature where tails are horizontal. Instead, it is a design element fundamental to human aviation, a vertical stabilizer crucial for maintaining directional stability in flight. This single, anomalous detail transforms the object from a simple carving into a profound puzzle. To most Egyptologists, it remains a ritual object or a child's toy, perhaps a model of a falcon representing the god Horus. The ancient Egyptians were master observers of nature, and stylized animal forms are common in their art. Yet the precision of that vertical tail fin nags at the imagination. When aviation engineers and aerodynamics experts examined the object, they noted its proportions were curiously advanced. The wings appear to be airfoils shaped to generate lift. Intrigued, researchers built accurate, scaled replicas of the wooden artifact and tested its flight characteristics. The results were startling. When launched with a gentle throw, the Saqqara Bird does not tumble or dive. It glides. It demonstrates a stable, smooth flight path capable of covering a surprising distance. This performance is not an accident of shape, it is a consequence of design. The artifact possesses inherent aerodynamic qualities that suggest an intuitive, if not explicit, understanding of principles like center of gravity, lift, and stability. So what are we truly looking at? The possibilities are as fascinating as they are divergent. It could indeed be a sophisticated toy, the product of an artisan who, through trial and error or brilliant observation, crafted an object that flew pleasingly. Perhaps it was a ceremonial object meant to symbolize not just a bird, but the very concept of graceful, sustained flight in the afterlife. The most speculative theory wonders if it represents a fragment of lost observation, a physical model based on watching the flight patterns of certain seeds or insects, translated into a larger, human-scale concept. This idea fuels a captivating line of thought. Could ancient cultures have grasped the basic mechanics of flight long before the era of balloons and engines? The Saqqara Bird stands alone with no blueprints, no larger counterparts, and no written explanations to accompany it. It is a silent, wooden hypothesis. It does not prove the ancient Egyptians had aircraft, but it does challenge the assumption that the principles of aerodynamics were entirely beyond their reach. It suggests a moment of inspiration where observation and craftsmanship intersected to create something that, centuries later, would be recognized not just as art, but as a functional design. The artifact rests in a museum case, a graceful enigma from the age of the pharaohs. It asks us a simple, haunting question. Were its creators merely carving a bird, or were they, in their own way, dreaming of the sky? Sometimes an artifact is not mysterious for its craftsmanship, but for the impossible place it is found. In the year 1936, along a creek bed near the town of London, Texas, a discovery was made that would ignite a debate lasting nearly a century. A couple out for a walk noticed an unusual rock formation with what appeared to be a piece of wood protruding from it. They broke the rock open and found, encased perfectly within the solid stone, a simple iron hammer with a wooden handle. It was an ordinary tool, the kind used by a blacksmith or carpenter of the 19th century, yet its context was anything but ordinary. The rock that had formed around it, a hard, concretionary limestone, was analyzed and dated to the Cretaceous period. This places its formation at a time when dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex roamed the Earth over 100 million years ago, in an era long before the first humans are believed to have walked the planet. This is the core of the enigma known as the London Hammer. How could a clearly human-made object, a tool of iron and wood, become sealed inside stone that predates humanity itself by tens of millions of years? The artifact presents a direct collision between two different narratives of the past. For some, it is seen as powerful, physical evidence that challenges the established timelines of geology and human evolution, suggesting that intelligent beings existed far earlier than science currently accepts. For mainstream geologists and archaeologists, the explanation lies in a fascinating natural process called concretion. Minerals in water can precipitate and harden around an object, forming a solid nodule of rock in a relatively short geological time frame, perhaps centuries or a few thousand years. In this view, the hammer is not ancient at all, but a more recent tool, perhaps from the 1800s, that was lost or discarded in a mineral-rich environment. Over time, flowing water deposited layers of calcite and other minerals around it, cementing it into a stone shell that merely appears ancient. The debate persists because the concretion process itself is not fully understood in every detail, and the exact conditions that formed this particular rock are lost to time. The hammer has been tested, and its iron shows a purity and composition unusual for modern steel, which some point to as further evidence of its anomalous nature, while others argue it could simply be the product of a specific, older forging technique. So what are we left with? The London Hammer is a classic, almost perfect example of an out-of-place artifact. It forces a confrontation between what we think we know about deep time and the silent, stubborn evidence of a single object. It does not stand alone as proof of a rewritten history, but it stands as a profound question mark. It asks us to consider the gaps in our understanding, not just of human history, but of the Earth's own processes. How quickly can nature entomb an object, making it look impossibly old? Or conversely, what if our measurement of time itself has blind spots? The hammer remains locked in its stone casing, a simple tool at the center of an immense mystery, challenging anyone who examines it to decide which story they find more incredible, that it is a modern artifact in a deceivingly old rock, or a relic from a world we have not yet dared to imagine. But a map can be an artifact just as puzzling as any object. In the year 1929, within the storied Topkapi Palace Library in Istanbul, a fragment of a world map was discovered that would send shockwaves through the field of historical cartography. It was drawn on gazelle skin in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. At first glance, it is a beautiful example of early 16th century mapmaking, showing the Atlantic Ocean with the coastlines of Europe, Africa, and the newfound lands of the Americas. But a closer examination reveals something that should not be there. At the southern edge of the map, below the Atlantic, lies a detailed landmass with distinct bays, rivers, and mountain ranges. This land is labeled, and its shape is eerily familiar to modern eyes. It appears to be the coastline of Antarctica, the frozen continent at the bottom of our world. The profound impossibility of this is staggering. Antarctica was not officially sighted by any known explorer until the year 1820, over 3 centuries after this map was drawn. And it has been covered in a crushing ice sheet miles thick for at least several million years. No human in recorded history could have seen its true, ice-free coastline. Yet here it is, depicted with a specificity that goes far beyond guesswork. Admiral Piri Reis himself provided a clue in his extensive notes on the map's margins. He wrote that he compiled it from many source maps, some contemporary, but including charts dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, over 1,700 years prior. He was not claiming to have explored these southern lands himself. He was copying from much older, now lost cartographic knowledge. This admission transforms the map from a curiosity into a historical thunderclap. It suggests that ancient mariners, long before the age of Columbus or Magellan, possessed accurate geographical knowledge of the entire planet, including a continent that would remain hidden for millennia. The theories attempting to explain this are as vast as the oceans it depicts. Some researchers propose the existence of an advanced, seafaring prehistoric civilization, perhaps one that flourished during a warmer interglacial period when Antarctica's coasts were partially exposed. Their maps, copied and recopied over centuries, could have survived in fragments in great libraries like Alexandria, eventually finding their way to an Ottoman admiral's desk. Others, more skeptical, argue that the landmass is simply a misplotted and distorted version of the southern coast of South America, its familiar shape twisted by the mapmaker's imperfect projection and the blending of multiple conflicting sources. They point to the lack of precise longitudinal measurement at the time, which could easily lead to such a continental mix-up, yet the detail on the Piri Reis fragment remains haunting. Certain geographic features, like a prominent bay and mountain range, align with subglacial scans of Antarctica's bedrock, the true shape of the continent beneath all that ice. This correlation is what keeps the mystery alive and fiercely debated. The map does not give up its secrets easily. It is a palimpsest of human knowledge, a layered document where a 16th century hand-traced lines first drawn in an antiquity we can no longer access. It forces us to confront a humbling possibility that the great age of exploration we celebrate in our history books may have been a rediscovery, not a first discovery. The Piri Reis Map is more than parchment and ink. It is a ghostly outline of a world we thought unknown, a silent testament to the unsettling idea that our planet's last hidden continent may have been found first by people whose names and ships are lost to time. The desert holds its secrets on a scale that defies the ground-bound observer. High on the arid plains of southern Peru, an entire landscape has been transformed into a colossal canvas. These are the Nazca Lines, a sprawling gallery of geoglyphs so vast they can only be truly comprehended from the sky. Etched into the dark desert pavement by the simple removal of reddish surface stones to reveal the lighter earth beneath, these lines form immense figures that have endured for over 2,000 years. Created by the Nazca culture between 500 years before the Common Era and 500 years after, the gallery includes staggering depictions of a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider with precisely curved legs, a monkey with a spiraling tail, and a whale swimming across the dry plateau, alongside hundreds of straight lines, trapezoids, and spirals that stretch for miles across. The barren terrain, the central, enduring mystery is not their existence but their intended audience. Why would a people without any known means of flight invest such monumental effort to create art they themselves could never see in its full, majestic form? The precision involved is itself a marvel of ancient engineering. Using simple tools and careful surveying techniques, likely involving stakes and ropes, the Nazca people plotted these perfect, kilometer-long straight lines and proportionally accurate animal figures, maintaining their clarity across the uneven desert floor. The stability of the dry, windless climate has preserved their work for centuries, but the intent behind it has blown away with the culture that created it. Scholars have proposed many theories, each offering a glimpse into a possible worldview. One prominent idea suggests the lines formed a giant astronomical calendar, with certain figures and pathways aligning with the rising and setting of the sun, moon, or specific stars during solstices or other significant dates, marking time for agricultural or ceremonial cycles. Another compelling theory views them as sacred pathways, ritual walkways used for ceremonial processions where the act of walking the line itself was a form of prayer or communion with the divine. The figures might have represented spiritual beings or clan totems, and traversing their outlines could have been a way to invoke their power or favor. A more practical, yet deeply spiritual, interpretation links the lines to water, the most precious resource in that harsh environment. Some of the longest lines point directly toward underground water sources in the distant mountains, while many of the animal figures are species associated with water in local mythology. In this view, the geoglyphs were a massive communal prayer for fertility and rain, a permanent invocation etched into the very skin of the earth to ensure survival. The most speculative ideas inevitably point skyward, wondering if the lines were meant as signals or messages for beings who could view them from above. While this captures the imagination, archaeologists generally find more grounded explanations in the profound spiritual and practical relationship between the Nazca people and their environment. The lines likely served multiple interconnected purposes, blending astronomy, religion, and community identity into a single landscape-altering practice. They are not a message for us or for imagined visitors, but a profound expression of a culture's attempt to order their universe, to connect the heavens with the earth, and to leave a permanent mark of their beliefs upon the world. To stand at ground level and see only a dusty groove in the earth, then to understand the majestic figure that groove is part of when seen from altitude, is to experience a profound disconnect. It forces a question about perspective itself. The Nazca Lines challenge us to see the world not just as it appears from our limited vantage point, but as it might be conceived in the mind of a culture that thought in terms of mountains, stars, and the long, straight paths to the divine. They remind us that some truths are only visible when you step back, way back, and view the entire picture. Deep within a temple dedicated to the goddess Hathor, a stone carving casts a long shadow of debate. On a wall in the complex at Dendera, Egypt, there is a detailed relief that, to a modern eye, looks astonishingly like a diagram of an electric light bulb. The image shows a large, elongated object, often described as a bulb or vase, with a sinuous, snake-like form inside, stretching from one end to the other. This central object is connected by a cable to what appears to be a box, and the entire assembly is held aloft by a kneeling figure grasping a pillar. For those who see it through a contemporary lens, the interpretation seems obvious, a depiction of ancient electrical technology, with the snake representing the glowing filament, the box as a power source or battery, and the pillar as an insulator. This reading is fueled by another curious architectural fact: the absence of soot stains on the ceilings of some of Egypt's deepest, most elaborate tombs and inner chambers, places where torches or oil lamps would have surely left marks over centuries of use. How, the question goes, did the artists and priests work in these pitch-black spaces without filling them with smoke? The idea of electric lighting provides a tantalizing, clean answer. Yet mainstream Egyptology offers a profoundly different and deeply symbolic interpretation. Scholars point to the rich tapestry of Egyptian creation mythology. In this context, the so-called bulb is not a technological device, but a stylized lotus flower, a sacred symbol of rebirth and creation. The snake inside is not a filament, but a representation of the god Harsomptus, a serpent deity associated with life force and regeneration, emerging from the lotus. The box is seen as the Jed pillar, a symbol of stability, and the entire scene is a complex religious allegory for the moment of cosmic creation, the emergence of life from the primordial waters. This is not a technical schematic, but a spiritual one, carved to convey metaphysical truths, not practical instructions. This stark contrast in understanding makes the Dendera relief a perfect case study in how we project our own world onto the past. The artifact itself is silent, its meaning encoded in a cultural language we are still deciphering. The debate it sparks is less about the stone itself and more about our frameworks for seeing. One view seeks a literal, technological explanation for observed phenomena, like soot-free chambers. The other seeks understanding within the intricate belief system that produced the art, arguing that imposing a 20th century invention onto a 2,000-year-old religious symbol misses its true and perhaps more profound purpose. The relief sits at the intersection of myth and machine, a single image that can be read in two completely different ways. It challenges us to ask where the line lies between inspired symbolism and lost invention. Could it be both? Could a culture have used a spiritual metaphor to represent a physical phenomenon they understood but could not explain in our terms? Or does our desire for a more advanced ancient world lead us to see light bulbs where the artist saw only sacred flowers and divine serpents? The Dendera carving remains, holding its two competing truths in stone, reminding us that sometimes the most illuminating artifacts are the ones that show us the biases of our own gaze. Geometric perfection can emerge in the most unexpected places. Scattered across the river deltas and jungle floors of Costa Rica lie hundreds of stone spheres, some as small as a grapefruit, others towering over 2 meters in diameter and weighing several tons. Crafted by the Dikwis culture between the years 600 and 1500 of the Common Era, these orbs are not just rocks, they are monuments of near-flawless spherical precision. Their surfaces are astonishingly smooth, their curves so true that modern measuring tools confirm their geometry rivals that of industrially made objects. In the heart of a tropical landscape where nature thrives on wild, untamed forms, these stones present a startling vision of human-imposed order. The most immediate question is one of method. How did a pre-Columbian society, using only stone hammers and other primitive tools, achieve such perfection? Archaeologists believe the process was one of immense patience and skill. Workers likely selected large boulders of granodiorite, a hard, local stone, and then used heat, perhaps from controlled fires, to weaken the surface. They would then peck away at the heated stone with other rocks, slowly chipping and grinding it down, constantly checking its form, likely using strings or other guides to test its curvature. The final polishing stages, possibly using sand and water, would have given the spheres their eerily smooth finish. This was not a quick task. Each large sphere represents thousands of hours of communal labor, a staggering investment of time and effort for objects with no apparent practical use. And that is the deeper mystery. What was their purpose? The spheres have been found in many settings, often arranged in lines, triangles, or large geometric patterns, frequently aligned with cardinal directions or placed near important structures. Some theories suggest they were astronomical markers, their alignments pointing to solstice sunrises or significant stars, turning the landscape into a celestial calendar. Others propose they were symbols of power and status, with the largest spheres denoting the most important chiefs or families, their size and perfection reflecting the social standing of their owners. Another idea is that they marked territorial boundaries or sacred pathways, their silent, imposing presence defining spaces of political or spiritual significance. Tragically, the full meaning of their arrangements has been largely lost. After their rediscovery in the 1930s, many spheres were rolled away from their original sites by agricultural workers or looted for gardens and government buildings, destroying their ancient contextual patterns. We are left with the spheres themselves, but not the map they once formed. This dislocation makes the puzzle infinitely harder to solve. The spheres now sit in plazas and museums, impressive yet isolated, like words ripped from a sentence. Their geometric perfection speaks to a culture that valued harmony, balance, and a sophisticated understanding of form. They represent a language of shape and placement that we can see but cannot fully read, a testament to a community that chose to express its identity, its astronomy, or its beliefs not through towering pyramids, but through the profound simplicity of the sphere, a shape that holds the universe within its curve. They remind us that mastery is not always about scale, but about intention, leaving behind a legacy not of written words, but of perfect, silent forms waiting in the green shadows. A single coin can carry the weight of an entire voyage. On the coast of Maine, at a well-documented Native American settlement site, archaeologists unearthed a small silver coin during a dig in the 1950s. It was a familiar Norse penny, minted between the years 1065 and 1080 of the Common Era. To hold it in your hand is to hold a paradox. This coin was struck in Norway over 4 centuries before Columbus sailed, yet it was found buried in soil on the other side of the Atlantic, among the artifacts of the Penobscot people. Its presence there is a quiet, metallic shock to the traditional narrative of American discovery. The coin itself is genuine, verified by numismatists beyond any doubt. Its journey, however, is a historical mystery wrapped in layers of earth and time. The straightforward interpretation is breathtaking. It is physical proof that Norse explorers traveled much farther south than their known settlements in Newfoundland, a place they called Vinland. Could a Viking ship have sailed down the coast, perhaps trading or taking shelter, leaving this one piece of currency behind? It is a compelling image that would rewrite maps and history books, extending the Norse footprint deep into what is now the United States. Yet archaeology demands context, and the context here is delicate. The coin was found not in a clear, undisturbed Norse layer, but within a complex indigenous site used for centuries. This opens other possibilities. Could the coin have arrived through vast, pre-existing Native American trade networks that moved goods across the continent? A piece of curious, shiny metal could have passed from hand to hand over generations, traveling hundreds of miles inland from a Norse contact point in the far north, eventually finding its resting place in Maine. An even more skeptical view suggests it could be a modern intrusion, accidentally dropped at the site by a collector or even planted, though the integrity of the original archaeologists makes this seem unlikely. The Maine Penny stands alone. No other Norse artifacts have been found in the region to corroborate its story. It is a solitary data point in a sea of silence, which is what makes it so fascinating and so frustrating. It is not enough to build a new chapter of history upon, yet it is too significant to ignore. It dangles the possibility of a much broader, more interconnected pre-Columbian world, where the Atlantic was not an impassable barrier but a highway occasionally traveled. The coin forces us to sit with uncertainty. It asks us to weigh a single, solid fact against the absence of any supporting evidence. Was it lost from a Norse sailor's pouch, or did it arrive in a Wabanaki trader's bundle? This tiny piece of silver holds 2 competing histories within its worn face, and until another like it is found, it remains a perfect emblem of historical mystery, a whisper of contact that we can neither fully prove nor comfortably dismiss. Sometimes a mystery is solved, but its story lingers, a ghost in the collective imagination. In the year 1961, 3 rockhounds searching for geodes in California's Coso Mountains found what appeared to be a perfect specimen. They cracked it open, expecting the crystalline interior of a typical geode. Instead, they found a mechanical object encased within the stone. It was a spark plug, a common automotive part from the early 20th century. Yet, the rock surrounding it was said to be a geode, and initial, informal estimates of its age were staggeringly ancient, suggesting it could be 500,000 years old. The implications were explosive. How could a modern spark plug become sealed inside a stone that formed long before humans existed? The artifact was quickly seized upon as the ultimate evidence of a lost technological civilization or even visitors from beyond our world. It became a legend cited for decades as proof that our history is wrong, but science, with its slow and meticulous methods, eventually caught up with the legend. Professional geologists and materials experts examined the so-called Coso Artifact. their analysis revealed a more grounded, yet equally fascinating, truth. The encasing material was not a geode formed over millennia. It was a concretion, a hard lump of clay and iron oxide that can form relatively quickly around an object in the right mineral-rich environment. The object inside was definitively identified as a champion spark plug from the 1920s, a model used in early Ford automobiles. The mystery had a perfectly ordinary explanation. A spark plug was likely lost or discarded in the dry California hills. Over the decades, mineral-laden water percolated around it, depositing layers of hard sediment that cemented into a solid shell, making it appear far older than it was. The story persists, however, as a powerful modern myth. It illustrates a crucial point about how mysteries are born, not from deception, but from a collision between observation and interpretation. The finders saw an object in a stone and reached for the most extraordinary explanation, fueled by the tantalizing possibility of rewriting history. They did not have the geological expertise to recognize the far more likely process of concretion. This artifact serves as an essential cautionary tale in the study of the unexplained. It underscores the absolute necessity of rigorous verification, of subjecting extraordinary claims to ordinary scientific scrutiny before leaping to world-altering conclusions. Yet its enduring fame also reveals something profound about us. The solved mystery did not simply fade away. It captured and still holds the public imagination because it speaks to a deep-seated human desire, the hope that the past is stranger and more wonderful than we have been told. The Coso Artifact, in the end, is not evidence of ancient astronauts, but evidence of our own yearning for wonder. It reminds us that the line between a solved puzzle and an enduring legend is often drawn not by facts alone, but by the stories we choose to keep telling. A story can become an artifact all its own. In the annals of unexplained archaeology, few tales are as persistent or as perfectly shaped for modern myth as that of the Dropa Stones. The narrative, which first surfaced in the mid-20th century, is compelling in its detail. It claims that in 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Kai Pu-te discovered a series of burial caves in the remote Bayan Karaula Mountains near Tibet. Inside, he reportedly found the skeletal remains of small, large-headed beings, and alongside them, hundreds of stone discs, each with a hole in its center and a fine, spiral groove running from that hole to the outer edge. This groove, upon closer inspection, was said to be not a tool mark, but a continuous line of tiny, unknown hieroglyphic characters. The story continues that the discs were eventually deciphered, revealing a tragic account. They told of a people called the Dropa, whose spacecraft crashed in the mountains thousands of years ago. Stranded and unable to repair their craft, they tried to make peace with the local Ham tribes but were met with fear and hostility, ultimately perishing in their isolated new home. It is a complete and haunting science fiction narrative, etched not in books but supposedly in stone. Yet here lies the profound twist. The entire foundation of this mystery rests on a profound absence. No credible institution houses these discs. No peer-reviewed journal published Kai Pu-te's findings. The few blurry photographs that circulate are inconclusive at best. Mainstream archaeology universally classifies the Dropa Stones as a modern fabrication, a hoax that likely began with a misidentified Neolithic artifact, perhaps a common-by disc, a ceremonial jade object with a central hole, and then was woven into an elaborate story by imaginative authors. The narrative checks every box for a compelling legend: ancient astronauts, a lost translation, a mysterious location, and a tragic end. Its power is not in its truth, but in its structure. It endures because it fits a pattern we find deeply satisfying, a hidden chapter of contact and catastrophe. This makes the Dropa Stones a different kind of artifact altogether, one made not of rock but of ideas. They represent how easily archaeological mystery can blend with science fiction, creating a hybrid that is incredibly difficult to dispel. Once a story provides answers to ancient questions: who built this? Where did this knowledge come from? It satisfies a curiosity that rigorous, often incomplete, science cannot. The stones live on in books, documentaries, and online forums, not as physical objects to be tested, but as cultural landmarks in our collective imagination. They ask us a crucial question about our relationship with the past. Do we seek understanding, or do we seek a story? The Dropa tale offers a complete, dramatic story. Real archaeology, by contrast, often offers only fragments, uncertainties, and patient, slow-moving analysis. The endurance of this legend is a testament not to ancient aliens, but to the timeless human desire for narratives that connect the dots, that make the silent stones speak in a language we desperately wish to understand. Andesite is a hard, unforgiving stone, yet the surfaces of the Ica stones are covered in intricate, flowing lines. Discovered in the riverbeds and caves near Ica, Peru, these thousands of carved rocks depict scenes that seem to tear pages from two different books and fuse them together. On one hand, they show familiar ancient Peruvian life, with fishing scenes and cultural rituals. On the other, they present images that are shockingly anachronistic, detailed depictions of what look like humans interacting with dinosaurs, performing complex surgeries like heart transplants and cesarean sections, and studying astronomical charts that include other worlds. The man who brought them to the world's attention in the 1960s, a local physician named Javier Cabrera, claimed they were a vast, ancient library left by a lost civilization with advanced knowledge, a record meant to survive cataclysm. The stones, he asserted, were genuine artifacts, and their imagery proved that humans and dinosaurs coexisted, and that prehistoric cultures possessed medical and astronomical understanding far beyond our assumptions. It is a narrative of breathtaking scope, etched in stone. The scientific community, however, reached a very different verdict. Geologists who examined the andesite noted the carvings showed no signs of the natural patina or weathering one would expect from stones allegedly buried for millennia. The grooves were fresh, sharp, and clean. Investigators tracked the source to a family of local farmers who openly admitted, at various times, to carving the stones themselves using modern tools, aging them with cow dung, and selling them to tourists and collectors. For mainstream archaeology, the case was closed, a clear and admitted modern fabrication. Yet this is where the true, and perhaps more profound, mystery of the Ica stones begins. If they are known fakes, why does their story persist with such power? The enigma shifts from the stones themselves to the human impulses they reveal. Their creation was likely driven by simple economics at first, a cottage industry catering to a market hungry for souvenirs and the sensational, but their adoption by figures like Dr. Cabrera, an educated man who built an entire museum around them, speaks to a deeper current, the powerful human desire to find tangible evidence for forbidden histories. The stones provided that evidence in a direct physical form. They answered tantalizing questions with visual certainty. Yes, humans saw dinosaurs. Yes, ancient surgeons were that advanced. They offered a complete, alternative narrative in a format that felt authentically ancient, heavy, and permanent. This challenges the very process of how we authenticate the past. It highlights the tension between expert analysis, which relies on chemistry, geology, and context, and the powerful allure of a story that feels intuitively true to some. The stones continue to attract believers not because the evidence for their antiquity is strong, but because the story they tell fills a gap in the popular imagination, a longing for a past that is more dramatic, more connected, and more knowledgeable than the fragmented one presented by conventional archaeology. They stand as a monument not to a lost civilization, but to our own capacity for belief, asking us where we draw the line between hopeful interpretation and evidential fact, when faced with a mystery we dearly wish were real. Buried alongside the bones of an ancient giant, a metal wedge whispers of a time out of place. In 1974, on the banks of the Mureș River in Romania, workers uncovered a startling find. Roughly 10 meters down, nestled in a layer of sand and clay alongside the fossilized remains of a mastodon, they found a strange, wedge-shaped object. It was heavy, metallic, and showed clear signs of being worked by human hands. Laboratory analysis later identified it as a composition of 89% aluminum, with traces of copper, zinc, silicon, and other elements. This is the Aiud Wedge, and its existence in that ancient layer of earth presents a clean, scientific impossibility. The mastodon bones it was found with date the stratum to around 11,000 years before the Common Era, a time when humanity was in the late Stone Age, working with flint and bone. Pure metallic aluminum, however, does not exist in nature. It is locked tightly inside bauxite ore and requires a complex, energy-intensive electrolytic process to separate and refine. This process was not invented until the year 1825. So how did a refined aluminum object end up buried with an Ice Age mammal? The immediate, skeptical explanation offered by many archaeologists is one of modern intrusion. They propose the wedge is simply a broken tooth from a modern excavator bucket made of hardened aluminum alloy, which accidentally fell into the pit during earlier digging or was mixed into the older layers by subsequent earth-moving. This is a common and sensible way to resolve such anomalies, attributing them to contamination of the archaeological site. Yet the mystery persists because of the details surrounding its discovery. The workers who found it insisted the object was embedded deep within the undisturbed sediment, directly associated with the ancient bones, not loose in recently disturbed soil. Furthermore, the alloy composition, while primarily aluminum, includes elements not typical of most modern industrial excavator teeth, which are usually made from much harder steel alloys to withstand abrasion. This has led to other, far more speculative ideas. Could it be a fragment from a much more recent, yet still historical, aluminum object that somehow worked its way down through the soil over centuries? Or does it point to the vanishingly rare phenomenon of naturally occurring metallic aluminum, which can form under extraordinary geological conditions, like in the reducing atmospheres of certain volcanic vents? If so, could ancient people have found and worked such a rare native metal? The Aiud Wedge does not offer easy answers. It sits at the precise intersection where geology meets archaeology and where clear-cut timelines begin to blur. It forces us to confront the messy reality of digging into the past, where layers can shift and objects can move, challenging our certainty about what belongs where. This small, heavy piece of metal is a lesson in humility. It reminds us that an artifact alone, without impeccable, documented context, can tell two completely different stories. One story speaks of a simple mistake, a modern tool in an ancient setting. The other, far more tantalizing narrative, hints at a material out of time, a silent, metallic question mark resting beside the bones of a forgotten world. A weathered slab of greywacke stone carries a message from another world, discovered by a Swedish-American farmer in Minnesota in 1898. The Kensington Runestone is a rectangle of rock inscribed with runes, the ancient writing system of the Norse. At first glance, it seemed like a prank, a curious fake, but the inscription told a story too compelling to ignore. It claimed to be a record left by a group of Norse explorers in the year 1362, a full 130 years after the Viking settlement at Elance Ox Meadows in Newfoundland was abandoned. The text describes a tragic event, a group of men out fishing returning to their camp to find 10 of their companions slain, red with blood. It ends with a plea to the reader to pray for their souls. If genuine, this stone would not merely be an artifact, It would be a historical thunderclap, placing European explorers deep in the heart of North America over a century before Columbus. The academic world reacted with deep skepticism. Linguists pointed out that the runic alphabet used contained anachronisms, forms that seemed more consistent with 19th century knowledge of runes than with 14th century practice. The language itself, a mix of Old Swedish and Old Norse, struck experts as oddly modern. The prevailing consensus became clear: the stone was a clever, emotionally charged hoax, likely created by the farmer or someone in his community, perhaps as a testament to Scandinavian pride in the New World. Yet, like a stubborn ghost, the stone refused to be laid to rest. Counter-arguments emerged, focusing on the physicality of the object itself. Geologists who examined the inscription noted that the carved grooves showed significant weathering, a mineralization within the cuts that appeared consistent with centuries of exposure, not decades. This weathering, some argued, would be incredibly difficult to fake in the late 1800s. Furthermore, the stone was found tangled in the roots of a large aspen tree, a tree estimated to be at least 40 years old, suggesting the stone had been there long before the farmer arrived. The debate thus became a perfect storm of conflicting expertise, a clash between the science of language and the science of stone. On one side, linguists see a text that feels wrong for its time. On the other, some geologists see a physical object that has aged in a way that feels authentic. This standoff transforms the Kensington Runestone into something more than an archaeological puzzle. It becomes a symbol. For many in the Scandinavian American community of the Upper Midwest, the stone represents a tangible link to a heroic, pioneering past, a validation of their heritage written in the ancient script of their ancestors. For mainstream academia, it represents the dangers of allowing cultural desire to override methodological rigor. The stone sits squarely at the intersection of evidence and identity, asking a difficult question: how do we separate what we wish were true from what the evidence, in all its messy contradiction, actually suggests? Its power endures not because the mystery is solved, but because it encapsulates the very human struggle to inscribe our stories, our losses, and our presence upon the land, whether in the 14th century or the 19th. The image on the cloth is a whisper in linen. The Shroud of Turin, a length of herringbone weave fabric, holds the faint, haunting imprint of a man who appears to have suffered the Roman practice of crucifixion. For millions of the faithful, this is not merely an artifact. It is a sacred relic, believed to be the actual burial cloth that wrapped the body of Jesus Christ. The faint, sepia-toned image shows the front and back of a bearded man with wounds consistent with the biblical accounts, from the crown of thorns to the piercing of the side. Its power as an object of veneration is undeniable, a tangible connection to a story that has shaped civilizations. Yet for science, the shroud presents a riddle that has stubbornly resisted a definitive solution. The central question is not primarily one of faith, but of physics. How was this image created? It is not a painting. No pigments or brushstrokes have been found. The coloration is incredibly superficial, affecting only the topmost fibers of the linen threads. It resembles a delicate photographic negative with an astonishing level of three-dimensional data encoded in its varying tones, as if the cloth recorded a burst of radiant energy from the body it covered. This inexplicable method of image formation is the core of the enduring mystery. In the late 1980s, scientists were granted permission to perform radiocarbon dating on a small sample of the cloth. The results, published in 1988, placed its origin between the years 1260 and 1390, squarely in the medieval period. For many, this seemed to settle the matter, labeling it a skillful, if inexplicable, medieval forgery. Yet the debate did not end. Proponents of its authenticity raised compelling counterpoints. They noted that the sample taken might have been from a section repaired after a medieval fire, contaminating the dating. They pointed to forensic analysis of the apparent bloodstains, which behave like real blood, and to the presence of pollen grains embedded in the fabric that are native to the region around Jerusalem. The shroud, therefore, sits in a perfect storm of contradiction. Scientific dating suggests a medieval origin, while other scientific analyses of its materials suggest a Middle Eastern provenance from antiquity. And hovering above all this is the image itself, a phenomenon that no one has been able to perfectly replicate with the technologies available in the 14th century, or arguably, even with some of our technologies today. It is this unresolvable tension that gives the Shroud of Turin its unique place in the world of mysteries. It transcends categories, existing simultaneously as a profound article of faith for many and as an unsolved scientific puzzle for others. It asks us to hold two different kinds of truth in our minds at once. The mystery lies less in proving what it is and more in explaining how it could be. Whether viewed through the lens of devotion or the lens of empirical inquiry, the shroud remains a silent linen enigma, its faint image continuing to speak volumes about the human search for meaning and the enduring puzzles left behind by history. Their silent gaze holds the weight of an entire island's history. On the remote shores of Easter Island or Rapa Nui stand the monumental stone figures known as the Moai. We recognize them as the iconic, brooding heads, but that is only part of the story. Each one is a full-bodied statue, carved from compressed volcanic ash and buried up to their necks by centuries of soil. They are not merely sculptures, they are colossal engineering projects, with some weighing over 80 tons and standing as tall as a 5-story building. The immediate, breathtaking mystery is one of logistics. How did a Polynesian society, using only stone tools, wooden levers, and fiber ropes, move these giants from the inland quarry where they were carved to ceremonial platforms scattered all around the coastline, a journey of up to 12 miles over rugged, hilly terrain? For decades, the prevailing theory was that they were laid flat and dragged on wooden sledges or rollers, a method that would have consumed vast quantities of the island's precious timber. But recent experimental archaeology, combined with a careful re-examination of oral histories, has proposed a far more dynamic and astonishing method: that the statues were walked. In this theory, teams of workers used a complex system of ropes to rock the Moai from side to side, pivoting it on its curved base, inching it forward in a controlled, upright shuffle. It is a method that aligns with local legend, which speaks of the statues walking with the mana, or spiritual power, of the chiefs. This walking theory transforms our image of the process from one of brute force to one of coordinated rhythm and profound skill, a communal dance with stone. Yet solving the how only deepens the mystery of the why. What drove this society to dedicate generations of labor to this single, overwhelming pursuit? The Moai were not random monuments. They represented deified ancestors, powerful chiefs whose carved faces, with their strong brows and set mouths, were believed to channel spiritual energy or mana back into the community. They faced inland, watching over the villages, their presence a perpetual link to the past and a source of protection and fertility. This was a society that invested its entire identity and resources into this stone pantheon. The deeper, more haunting enigma is the story of what came next. Archaeological and paleo-environmental evidence paints a picture of a thriving culture that eventually faced profound hardship. The very act of creating the Moai, which required immense amounts of wood for transport and rope, along with clearing land for agriculture, likely contributed to severe deforestation. This loss of trees led to soil erosion, decreased crop yields, and the collapse of the seabird populations that were a vital food source. The societal structure, once centered on ancestor worship and statue construction, appears to have fractured. The period of statue carving ceased, and oral histories tell of conflict and upheaval. The Moai themselves were toppled, perhaps in wars between clans or as a rejection of the old beliefs that seemed to have failed the people. These silent sentinels, therefore, hold a dual legacy. They are breathtaking testaments to human ingenuity, cooperation, and spiritual ambition, proof of what a unified society can achieve. Simultaneously, they stand as a powerful, stone-carved lesson about the delicate balance between cultural ambition and environmental limits. Their empty eyes look out not with judgment, but with a question for all of us, a reminder that even the grandest monuments are built upon the foundation of the world that sustains them. The intricate dance of life is normally hidden from the naked eye. Yet, a dark stone disc from Colombia seems to depict it with startling clarity. Known as the genetic disc, this circular artifact, carved from a hard, black stone called lyddite, is covered on both sides with precise, intricate carvings. The images are not of gods or animals, but of biological processes. There are clear depictions of human fetuses in different stages of development, from early formation to a near full-term position. Other carvings show cells in the process of splitting, a recognizable representation of mitosis, the division that allows life to grow. To a modern observer, it looks like a textbook illustration of embryology and cell biology. This is the heart of the profound puzzle. The disc is believed by its finders to date to a prehistoric culture, possibly thousands of years old, a time long before the invention of the microscope or the formal scientific understanding of cellular life. How could ancient artisans carve what they could not possibly see? The very subject matter feels anachronistic, a piece of advanced knowledge placed impossibly out of time. This places the genetic disc at the center of a fierce and ongoing debate. Skeptics argue it must be a modern creation, an elaborate hoax carved in the 20th century using knowledge from contemporary biology texts. They point to the lack of a clear, professionally documented archaeological context for its discovery, which leaves its origins shrouded in personal testimony rather than scientific excavation. The polished, precise lines, they suggest, could be the work of a skilled artisan with access to modern tools and medical diagrams. Yet, those who argue for its authenticity present a counterpoint that is equally compelling. They ask what would be the motive for such a sophisticated forgery. Creating an object of this detail from such hard stone is a monumental task. If it were a fake intended for profit, why choose such an obscure and academically dense subject matter, instead of something more obviously mystical or valuable like gold or jade? The biological precision itself is strange, as if the carver understood the concepts not just as shapes but as processes. This leads to the dual mystery that makes the disc so captivating. If it is genuinely ancient, it forces a radical reconsideration of prehistoric knowledge. Did a lost culture develop a form of biological science through intense observation and intuition, perhaps aided by lenses made from crystal or water, reaching conclusions about life's origins that we only confirmed centuries later? Or does it point to a source of information we cannot yet explain? Conversely, if it is a modern fake, the mystery simply shifts. It then becomes a question of the forger's inspiration. Where did they find such detailed, accurate biological models to copy, and what compelled them to encode that information in a format meant to appear ancient? The disc, whether a prehistoric artifact or a modern puzzle, ultimately challenges a fundamental assumption. It asks us to consider whether our timeline for scientific discovery is too rigid, and whether the deep curiosity about where life comes from might have led ancient minds to truths we assume were ours alone to uncover. It rests as a dark, circular question, its carved cells and embryos a silent challenge from the past, or perhaps from a very clever present, wondering how well we truly understand the history of understanding itself. Beneath the cold, dark waves of the Baltic Sea lies a shape that should not be there. In 2011, a team of Swedish treasure hunters were using side-scan sonar to search for old shipwrecks when their screens revealed something utterly unexpected. Resting on the seafloor at a depth of nearly 90 meters was a massive circular object roughly 60 meters across. The sonar image was crisp and shocking, showing a distinct, almost geometric form. With a rounded central disc and a long, trailing ridge, its silhouette bore an uncanny resemblance to a certain famous starship from popular culture, instantly earning it the nickname the Baltic Sea Anomaly. But this was no movie prop. It was a physical, sonar-confirmed object sitting in the silent depths, and its very presence ignited a firestorm of speculation. The immediate, visceral reaction was one of recognition. The shape seemed too perfect, too structured to be a random rock. Some observers pointed to what appeared to be straight edges, right angles, and even stair-like features leading up to the central disc. In the absence of clear answers, the human imagination rushed in. Was this the remains of a sunken, ancient monument, a Baltic cousin to Stonehenge, submerged when sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age? Could it be a secret World War II anti-submarine device, a forgotten piece of naval hardware now covered in sediment? Or, as the most dramatic theory suggests, was it evidence of something not of this world, a crashed craft of unknown origin resting on the seabed? The mystery was amplified by strange secondary reports from the divers who later visited the site. They described electronic equipment malfunctions when they approached the object, and they retrieved samples of what appeared to be metals not typically found in natural formations. The stage was set for a classic confrontation between extraordinary possibility and mundane explanation. Geologists and marine scientists soon offered their analysis. They argued that the Baltic Sea floor is a museum of glacial activity, scraped and shaped by massive ice sheets thousands of years ago. The anomaly, they proposed, is most likely a glacial erratic, a large boulder deposited by a retreating glacier, possibly composed of dense basalt. The seemingly straight lines and right angles could be the result of natural fracturing and erosion, with the sonar image creating an illusion of precision due to the angle of the scan and the play of sediment around the base. The stair-like features might simply be parallel glacial striations, grooves cut into the rock as it was dragged along by ice. This scientific viewpoint is compelling in its simplicity, using known processes to explain an unknown form. Yet, the anomaly's stubborn symmetry and the anecdotal accounts from the dive team have prevented the case from being closed. The greatest obstacle to solving this mystery, however, is not conflicting opinion but simple logistics. Exploring an object at that depth is incredibly difficult, dangerous, and prohibitively expensive. Mounting a proper archaeological or geological expedition with remotely operated vehicles, core drills, and comprehensive sampling would cost a fortune, and without a clear commercial or academic imperative, funding has not materialized. So the object remains in the twilight zone of investigation, too intriguing to dismiss but too costly to properly study. In this way, the Baltic Sea Anomaly is a quintessential modern mystery. It was born not from a shovel in the dirt but from a digital ping on a sonar screen. Our technology gifted us the question, but it has not yet provided the means for an answer. The void of definitive data becomes a canvas for our deepest curiosities and our wildest theories. It represents a new kind of artifact, one discovered through the lens of technology, reminding us that the final frontiers for exploration are not just in space, but here on Earth, in the vast, uncharted darkness of our own oceans, where shapes wait in the silence, challenging us to decide what is a trick of the light and what is a message from the deep. 20 objects, each a silent question mark, collectively form a chorus of doubt against the official story. Individually, they are puzzles. Together, they weave a pattern that challenges the very foundation of how we view human history. We often imagine progress as a straight line, a steady climb from primitive tools to complex technology. But what if the graph of human knowledge looks less like a smooth incline and more like a series of peaks and valleys with entire mountains of understanding lost to time? These artifacts suggest exactly that. The Antikythera Mechanism implies a peak of mechanical genius that vanished for a millennium. The Piri Reis Map hints at a summit of global cartography that sank beneath the waves of forgotten exploration. The Baghdad Battery could represent a small, flickering spark of electrochemical insight that was never properly kindled into a flame. This pattern forces a humbling realization that innovation is not guaranteed. Knowledge is fragile. It can be lost to conflict, to natural disaster, to the simple, slow decay of a society that no longer values or understands its own tools. The Library of Alexandria burned, but how many other libraries, how many other workshops and schools of thought have faded without a single historical footnote? These objects are the surviving fragments, the scattered pages from those lost volumes. They open doors to possibilities that mainstream history has long kept closed. Could there have been ancient global voyages that connected distant continents, seeding ideas across the world long before the age of Columbus? Do the shared themes in flood myths and cosmic cataclysms point to real, planet-altering events that reset the board for human civilization, leaving only the hardiest scraps of technology behind? The most speculative door leads to the question of inspiration itself. When an artifact seems impossibly advanced, the human mind naturally seeks a source. Could limited, fleeting contact with a non-human intelligence, whether extraterrestrial or otherwise unknown, have provided a catalytic spark of knowledge that was then interpreted and integrated into a culture's own framework? It is a dramatic idea, but it speaks to a deep human instinct. When faced with the inexplicable, we look for a teacher. Skepticism, of course, is the essential anchor in this sea of speculation. It is the scientific tool that prevents us from building castles on sand. Every extraordinary claim demands extraordinary evidence, and most anomalies do find ordinary explanations upon closer, rigorous inspection, like the Coso spark plug. Yet the handful that withstand that scrutiny, the ones that remain stubbornly unexplained, serve a purpose far greater than proving any single theory. They are not meant to give us easy answers, but to protect us from easy certainty. They remind us that history is not a closed book with a final chapter already written. It is an ongoing excavation, a live conversation with the past. The true value of these mysteries is not in the answers they provide today, but in the questions they keep alive for tomorrow. They cultivate a necessary humility, a recognition that our current understanding is a work in progress, built on the fragments we have found so far. They are the ultimate inspiration for continued exploration, the quiet whisper that urges another dig, another dive, another look at the old maps. For in the end, mystery is not the enemy of discovery, it is its very engine. It is the tantalizing gap in our knowledge that compels us to search, to learn, and to wonder. And as long as objects like these continue to emerge from the earth and the sea, we can be sure that the dust of ages still holds secrets waiting for the light. From intricate mechanisms to impossible maps, these 20 artifacts stand as silent witnesses to gaps in our historical record, each a piece of a puzzle we have not yet solved. They are not anomalies in the sense of being mistakes, but in the truest meaning of the word, deviations from the expected path, a path we thought we had charted with confidence. These objects remind us, in a tangible and sometimes unsettling way, that the past is far more complex and surprising than any single textbook narrative can ever hope to capture. It is a living, breathing story, still being written with every new discovery in a desert trench or a seabed scan. While rigorous science may one day provide satisfying explanations for some of these mysteries, unlocking the secrets of a strange alloy or finally dating a contested inscription, their greatest value is not necessarily in the answers they might one day yield. Their power lies in the profound questions they force us to ask, not just about them, but about ourselves. They provoke a necessary curiosity about the sheer scope of human ingenuity and resilience. How many times has our species climbed to a height of understanding, only to have that knowledge slip through our fingers, waiting to be rediscovered centuries later? They challenge the limits of our current knowledge, acting as permanent signposts at the border of the known, pointing into the vast territory of the not yet understood. They teach us humility, a reminder that our present is built upon a foundation of which we have only recovered fragments. So what do you think? Which of these silent witnesses speaks to you most powerfully? Does the mathematical elegance of the Antikythera Mechanism suggest a lost golden age of science, or does the haunting biological detail of the genetic disk hint at a forgotten way of seeing the world? We would love to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. This journey into the unexplained reminds us that history is never truly finished. If you enjoyed exploring these enigmatic objects with us, consider subscribing for more voyages to the edges of the map, where fact meets folklore and every discovery asks a new question.